Hello there, welcome to UngainlyTitan versus Civ 6. Well, I thought it might be of interest to some to witness my struggles against, or to learn how to play Civ 6 and attempt to win a game of Civ 6. Now, my normal approach to civilization games is that I pick a culture or society, in this case the Egyptians, and I generally try and play them until I figure out how to win. Any win will do, as long as I get a win, and then usually I sort of move on to the other civilizations. I normally also don't look up stuff on the internet relating to games like Civ. I think half the fun is figuring out how it works on my own. This stems from the fact that when I started playing games like this, the commercial internet really didn't exist, and there was no way to look up how to play games like this short of magazine articles or how-tos on how-to guides that you could buy in bookstores. Neither of which I ever really bothered with, because a lot of them were, they required a level of attention to detail and study that I just wasn't prepared to give. I'm a bit casual really when it comes to games like this. I mean, I'll play them and I'll enjoy them and I'll play them quite a lot, but I won't micromanage to the level that the really good players of Civilization will micromanage. Because I don't find that level of micromanagement interesting, so I tend to play at the standard difficulty settings, usually around, it's Prince I think at the moment. So I think we're on Prince, it's the standard, whatever the default setting is, but I'm on a standard continent rather than a small, which I think is the default setting. And this is only my third proper game. Now, I've started quite a lot more games than this, but I generally start quite a few games just to get the basic mechanics and see if I can get a city that's competitive at the beginning of the game out there. After that, then I play away until I kind of think I understand what I'm doing, and then I'll have a couple of goes where I'll play through to the end to a defeat or a victory in order to establish that what I think I understand is actually valid. Now, here we have your different civics, your different government policies that you can set up, and we'll just talk a bit about that towards the end. The big thing here is the Chinese are too close. You're far too close to my home city for me to be happy with. And also, since I have explored the northern section of the continent up as far as the edge of the Russian territory, and I've ran into sea, those mountain chains just the east of Ra Cadet ends in the sea, so I'm on a peninsula, I reckon, of the continent. So the Chinese, there just isn't room for the two of us. So I'm going to have to build up some military force, and then we attack the Chinese. Cities are actually easier to take than in previous versions of Civilization, in my experience. Certainly in Civ 4, Civ 5. The city defences are, well, they're difficult enough to reduce, but the thing is, once they're down and you have the city surrounded, they don't regenerate. So you can take a city easily enough. Keeping cities and raising cities, I've always generally gone for keeping cities, particularly if you capture them early in the game, because they just turn into your cities, especially when you've wiped out the parent civilization. Now, I've skipped a few turns here, but shortly after meeting the Chinese, we met Harald Hardrada, and then shortly after that he declared war on me, and furthermore he got the Russians to join in. Now, the Russians will go to war with you if they think they get away with it. At least my experience in previous Civilization games is that Peter in particular is a rather treacherous neighbour. So he can be quite fickle, but I don't think the Russians are pretty serious about it at this stage, because I dominate the city-states to the north of me. I'm the suzerain, and they're my allies, so Peter would have to march his troops across a fairly large chunk of real estate, and then to come at me. I've also managed to keep building the Oracle during the war. Because I had a decent army from the Chinese, and my major problem was that they were a bit outdated. And I needed access to iron, but I had iron next to Rat Cadet, so I was able to get that. So once I built a builder, I was able to get access to iron. Now, that's one of the big differences between this and previous versions of Civilization, in that your workers don't stay around forever. They build a limited number of improvements and they go away. So you have to build more ones. So that's even more things that you have to prioritize in your building, in your city planning and building and production planning, and which was never, of course, a strong point of mine. I've also managed to develop a religion. This is kind of the religious view of the map, and I am busily spreading it throughout my own civilization. I actually had more trouble from barbarians than I did from Harald Hardrada. It's one thing I've noticed in the couple of games that I've had in this version of Civilization, that the civilizations will declare war on you without having a horde of troops deployed on your frontier ready to go. As if like the formal state of war is enough, and they don't actually need to prosecute the war. Whereas in previous versions of Civilization, they tended to prosecute the war, at least initially, fairly vigorously. Now, Harold did send a few troops up to my city, but not really enough to be any kind of real threat. I suffered, I think I said, more casualties from the barbarians than I did from Harold. But we managed to simultaneously fight off the barbarians, and we managed to fight off Harold. Now, he did offer peace several times. It's a thing that, well, I suppose they did it in previous versions of Civ 2. As soon as you start threatening a city, they start offering peace terms. But I thought it was early enough in the game that I'd get away with ignoring him. I have had the experience of having an NPC power declare war on me in one of my earlier games, one of my two previous games. And I left the war drift on and on until I had actually built up a decent army, and then I went and attacked one of their cities. The cities nearby, so I attacked a couple of their cities. And, it didn't help that I raised one of the cities as well. So by the time I'd finished that, I had Warmonger, which lasted for the rest of the game. Everyone was denouncing me, and I could trade with nobody or do anything with anybody, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm a bit wary of developing a Warmonger, but I thought, again, it was early enough in the game that I'd get away with it. But I felt that when Harold had given me the opportunity to attack, or he had attacked me, that I'd have enough leeway, shall we say, in the system to just wipe him out. So this gives me this whole corner of the continent of my own. There does not appear to be a penalty in building lots of cities. And it's something I intend to try in this version of the game. Because previous versions of Civilization, the more cities you built, the harder it got to manage your empire. It generally caused unhappiness. And this unhappiness then, wrecked your economy because your workers were unhappy, they weren't as productive. Because they weren't as productive, you weren't building stuff as fast, and then you started falling behind the enemy, the NPCs and the AI players. So I decided that I'm going to try building a lot of cities in this version of the game, in this attempt, because there seems to be no downside to it. And the other thing I've noticed is that the culture from Civ 3, I think they brought in cultural boundaries where you could enforce your borders on your culture once you'd developed a certain level of governance. And they're doing the similar thing here. Once you've developed early empire, you can enforce your boundaries. But the boundaries do not expand rapidly. They stick to kind of the area of influence of the city, and they don't expand indefinitely. So you're not going to be in a situation where we are, 100 turns in, 98 turns in, and that in 100, 200 turns time, I'll be controlling the whole southern continent. No, the city-state still mightn't have, well, they will have joined up probably, but they won't have, even that area in the north between the three cities there, Memphis, Xi'an and Shedet, probably won't be completely controlled by my culture. That area off the map there, just that bay with the stone, would probably still be outside my sphere of influence, unless I build a city there. It's that kind of game. It's very different, so there's a lot of learning in comparison to it. Another thing I should point out is that nobody should take anything I say about Civilization 6 as true or gospel, because I don't necessarily know. I'm not an expert. I am still learning the game. This is not a tutorial. This is just a record, shall we say, of my experience in a particular game of Civ very early in my Civ 6 learning curve. So anything I say that I think is going on is my belief. It may not be true, because I could be mistaken. I could be bringing over views from previous editions of Civilization that are no longer valid in the current edition. Or I could be simply guessing, because not everything I've written is written into the Civipedia. There's a couple of things that I find annoying in the current. I think the Civipedia is less complete. I think they more expect you to look stuff up online, or take use of the fact that people traditionally look stuff up online at this stage. And the Civipedia, therefore, it's less complete than it used to be, which I don't like. It's a trend I don't like. I like to be able to look stuff up in game without having to go off and search and then figure out which of the search returns is the most useful, because sometimes you get involved in discussions and there's an awful lot of peripheral waffle to join through, because that isn't what has been flagged by the search engine is buried inside in pages and pages of posts. The other one is that if you start a dialogue with the AI players, a diplomatic dialogue, you have to actually go up into the corner and click the little X to shut down the dialogue. It's not part of the main menus to shut down the dialogue, which is kind of a pain in the ass, really. Just a niggle. It's annoying. A word about barbarians. Barbarians have given me a lot of trouble in this war with Harold, and they've given me a lot of trouble in previous editions of the game. Because your Civ does not expand inexorably across the whole continent until it meets the AI Civs, because your culture boundaries, don't expand inevitably across the globe until they meet. In areas under the fog of war, the brown areas, not the completely unexplored areas, although them too, but even in the brown areas, barbarian villages will respawn, and they'll respawn throughout the game. So I've had the experience in a previous game of barbarian villages on little islands off the coast of Antarctica, spawning advanced naval units, missile submarines, and I have losing the ability to use the harbours on my cities, because there's a missile boat sitting underwater in the harbour and I can't detect it, because I need destroyers to detect it. I haven't got the tech level to detect it in any other way other than by destroyers. So I need destroyers to detect it, and my destroyers on the other side of the continent, because I traditionally, unless I was on an island game or an archipelago game, or I was specifically at war, or there was a threat from a particular naval power, I tended not to build up large naval units. So I'd have 4 or 5 naval units, and I'd consider that enough. And in a lot of cases, in previous editions of Civ, it generally was enough to kind of hold your ground unless you actually got involved in a serious shooting war with an enemy player. You can just see the different ways of winning there. You get involved in a shooting war with an enemy player, and then you could build up the navy as you needed it. This kind of reactive build-up, I don't think it's as possible in this version of Civilization. But one of the things, anyway, yeah, the damn barbarians were denying me the sea coasts on 2 cities, which really affected their productivity and growth and food supplies and stuff like that, by having missile boats, and I had to bring around a destroyer fleet. That's another thing you can do in this version of the game. You can combine, once you have the technologies and the civics unleashed or unlocked, you can combine units to form corps on the land, and 2 units together to form a corps, or later on you can combine 3 units to form a field army. And you can do similar stuff in the navy. But not only do you need to bring around submarines to fight destroyers to fight these submarines, but you need to make sure that you have adequate escort, because you could also have the humiliating experience of losing your destroyer fleet because the enemy have a bunch of frigates and battleship fleets. Now the thing is, it'll beat any one of the frigate fleets, but there's enough of them there to wear it down. And the next thing, you have no naval presence at all. So yeah, barbarians can be a real problem in this version of the game. So what do I think of it so far? Well, I'm having fun. In fact, when I play it, the biggest problem I've had so far is stopping. As soon as I start a session of Civilization 6, I've tended to keep playing into the morning, usually up until, well past any sensible hour to go to bed at. And because it's really pushing the one more turn for this, one more turn for that button. There is a lot in it. It's far more complex, I think, than any previous version of Civ, because they've separated out the civics from the research as a separate research tree from science, and there are synergies back and forth. They have the different government types. You can adopt different policies. They don't come with fixed sets of policies. You have, of course, the whole city management and unit management aspect of the game, which is a whole mini-game all in itself. So, and there's quite a lot. There's a lot to take in on this game, and I'm only scratching the surface of it. I'm really, really enjoying it. Like I said, it is really pushing the old just another turn button. Wait another 3 turns and you'll have this, and 5 more turns and you'll have a wonder. It is very different in many respects, but similar. It reminds me an awful lot of my experience of playing Civ 3 for the first time. But it is a different game. It is definitely worth it. I'm really having fun with it. I will probably play this for quite some time. It'll keep me occupied for ages to come, I think. I will keep coming back to it more and more. So, I hope you found the video interesting. Thank you for watching and putting up with me, and please consider giving the video a like and the channel a subscription, and I'll catch you all again soon.